to be transparent, if they were Essendon, Carlton or Collingwood, there would be absolute mayhem around this footy club and the way it's performing and the situation it finds itself in. There was a story tonight on the Herald Sun website which refers to David Noble having to apologise to his players for going too hard after their demoralising round 3 loss. It talked about young players being visibly shocked. The Roos have confirmed that he reflected on it for a couple of days. He did go too hard and apologised. It was the first sort of public crack we've seen.
Yeah, it's a good story.
Nice face
it's a good story,
Noble.
and it confirms stories you've been hearing that there's been issues between player and coach, and that the coach hasn't been coping with the dreadful performances. John Ralph's piece hones in on their Brisbane game, which was a dreadful performance, and there's a deny from Daniel McPherson, the footy boss, that one player was in tears. But when you start reading stories like that, it doesn't look good for the coach.
Did the apology, though, come straight after, a few days after, or has it come this week? Because if it's come recently, that's a worrying sign.
No, I think the timing is
days after.
But it's been leaked 6 weeks after, which happens when performance. So just before we get to the Kangaroos' plight, this does speak to the cultural shift we're having of old school,
Absolutely.
Tell them honest feedback versus being. Where do you sit on this? Is David entitled after a loss like that to be?
It's hard to know, reading between the lines. Perhaps it got personal. That's the only reason I could think that you would apologise for something like that. And I've been in situations where a coach has questioned a player's haircut, and the performance is reflective of having flair with your haircut, and that you can understand why that would be offensive to a player. But if it's just specifically on field, about effort, about structure, about breaking team rules, I can't see how there could be an issue for David Noble, and in what case he could ever have to apologise.
The point about David Noble, and we've heard the new chairman Sonia Hood talk about this, and she's been quite impressive publicly. We have not heard it all, by the way, from Ben Amafia, or hardly at all this year that I can remember. But they've spoken about a development coach, a teaching coach for a developing young team. So I don't think you expect really nasty personal verbal sprays, which is the way it's framed in the Herald Sun.
Well, you do if they go outside the team structures and you lose by 103. They were critical of their performance in the pre-season. They called it embarrassing. It's been going on for a long time.
The rebuild coaches generally get a club that's all at sea, and they very rarely swim back to Success Island, do they? Like it takes a Clarkson or similar to get back. Normally they do the hard work and someone else comes in, and this is going to get worse because they haven't bottomed out yet.
Well, and it makes it hard.
Have they bottomed out yet, North? I don't think they have.
Kane, just on that, round 3 was 108, round 5, 68, 6, 60 points, round 7, 50, and then on the weekend, 78. So they're at like GWS and Gold Coast initial year period.
So to put it bluntly, is he the guy?
I think he was a good choice, in my opinion. I think
you still think he's the guy to go take them forward?
Why, Matthew?
I thought for what they needed was a mature person who's going to be able to... He's been seen it all, David Noble, and he's not a young... He's had Reece Shaw, so he's got to take the hits for a while.
And we don't know, because when you make list management errors like they have made, and I was watching Dumont play on Friday for a team that played in a prelim final, and he was exceptional for Port Adelaide, playing on the wing, went forward, kicked this goal, got back really hard. They gave him for nothing. It's similar to your point on Gold Coast with Brodie last week. Mason Wood would be really handy for North because he's a big body, he's experienced. You give up Ben Brown, who looks a really good forward at a good side, and then you make some errors that they have made in the list management space. We mentioned those. Others that they have delisted that would be handy. Tarrant would be handy, and the picks that they've taken. So it's hard for David Noble, and it's hard for us to judge him as a coach when you're rebuilding and you make the wrong call.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone. I disagree a little bit there. I don't think there's anyone.
Ben Brown was strange.
You think Dumont would get...
Other than Brown.
It helps, Hutchie, because their senior players right now are playing really poorly.
Yeah, and they're both... Correct me if I'm wrong, the last two coaches have barely been a process carrier. They've just been this is our
I know we're going on a break, but you asked me about David Noble.
I'm unconvinced.
Unconvinced.